I guess I would be a little bombastic to say that we are busting a few myths, like we do most of the times. But I think it's interesting because our own understanding through this process has really grown,
Yeah.
right? And therefore, when we were thinking about LinkedIn Lives, we were also talking about what would be an apt, name for this particular one, and which is how we struck up with need to have, nice
Nice
to
to
have,
have.
need to
Yeah.
have, that kind of a, because that was also a dilemma that was playing in our minds.
Yeah. I guess organization, industry, they're going through the pressure of how the market is pushing them, and they are trying to figure out what to do. Long time the process has been to focus on individuals' growth, and hence the leadership development, workshops, facilitation, leadership workshops offsite, sometimes team workshops outside, and somehow this new terminology jumps in, team coaching, and what is it, and how does industry deal with it? I guess what we are trying to do today is to possibly see how organizations are looking at team itself, um, and then possibly see in which of the conditions where uh, team coaching might not be required, might not be relevant, and then some of the situations where it might be necessary, and some of the situations where it might be good to have. Some of,
It's very interesting that you say this because um, I remember when I was doing my MBA many moons back. So there was something known as the galloping troika, right?
mm,
And somehow that kind of came to my mind again because you were talking about how organizations are really in the throes of change and impact and so on and so forth. And this is where I recall what Peter Hawkins says, which is so true for today's times, and that is there is a there is a need to do what you were doing, accomplish that and more today with less. Whether it
oh
is
yeah.
people, whether it is resources, whether it is money, whether it is time. So there is a need to do what you were doing and beyond. In terms of even the goals and targets in this
Right.
kind of a scenario.
Yeah, customers are now asking possibly the same outcome with less number of resources at a lesser cost. That's where customers are pushing in, and hence, how do you deliver more with less? The project timelines, at one point in time, I remember that the project timelines for developing phone, developing structures used to be like 1.5 year, 2 year kind of timeline, and they're now squeezing into 3 months, 4 months. So the gestation period for team, or let me say set of people to become a team, which was typically 8 months, year time frame, that gestation time frame is now squeezed into weeks and months, where different set of people need to come together, quickly become a team, gel together, and deliver, and then disperse again to form a new team. Right? That's the kind of pressure that organizations are working on today. So how is organization looking at teams? Let's start with that.
I just wanted to add one more thing. When we're saying what's really happening. So we both have had the experience in terms of EPC, where the timelines have really shortened. So what you were doing. So first of all, newer projects where you've not had experience, you need talent which you don't have in house. So your team composition itself is not homegrown teams. It's like you're also having um, the project which you could have taken easily 3 to 4 years now being squeezed into 2 years. And so you're learning. You've got a new team that needs to adjust, that needs to work and deliver a new area in a shorter time.
Yeah.
Right? So everything is kind of. And I also remember one more scenario, and that is about when we were more from your field, the IT field, where now with teams being cross locations, I think that itself. So I remember when I first encountered this word offshore, right? And I really was wondering what is offshore and onshore. And then that kind of struck me that how many people are so dispersed and from different locations, and yet you need to collaborate to deliver something which is common to all of them. Right?
Yeah.
So I think all those things are now becoming an important aspect.
Yeah, and gig economy is not helping. Right now, the role of individual is not necessarily need to be an employee role in order for you to be on the team or working with the team. Right? So people are becoming individual workers nowadays, expert in their own field, and organizations are casting around a specific work to offload and get the work done, and then get that integrated with the team that they're working on. Right? So the membership itself is changing. The type of membership itself is changing. Right? So yeah, that's not helping either.
Is it really? When do you need team coaching and when you don't need team coaching? So let's start with, when don't you need team coaching?
I guess it's two parts. So one is the ideal definition of team coaching itself, right? So working with teams is different than the need of team coaching, right? So working with team is going to be required, whether it is the structural imbalance, whether it is developing interdependence between the team, role clarity, and so on and so forth, right? Having a right skill, not having a right skill in the team. So that piece is still going to be required, but that piece may not necessarily be team coaching. Right? That may be more of an organizational, structural intervention that might be needed, and some of the senior guys can help them, and that would potentially become the part of your overall team engagement when you start working with the organization. So my first response to that is I don't think at this point in time, and it may become true in 5 to 10 years coming down the line. But at this point in time, organizations are not looking for team coaches alone. They're looking at people who have the capabilities to do multiple roles and make this intervention more systemic in nature than just doing a team. And at one point in time in future, organization would understand, where team coaching is most efficient and potentially hire team coaches only for the team coaching, like they do for individual coaching now. Earlier back 25 years, 30 years back, individual coaching was also in a space where the individual coaches were not in demand. And more holistic approach was needed. But now the organizations have evolved, and now they've started demanding individual coaching and say, okay, Mr. Individual Coach, you come, work with this leader, help them grow, get up. Right? That's the modality now organizations have started working. So in the near future, that may happen with the team coaches as well. But as of now, I think the demand is of more systemic intervention than just a team coaching.
So in our experience, we've actually seen teams, we've worked with them, etc. And the first thing that has struck is that, and I'm going back to this question: do they really need to be a team? So, and I don't know why, because, and maybe you lead up to it in a bit, but it feels like, that's also an important question to answer. They're getting the results, they're doing fairly well. So what really is the need for them to change?
Actually, if they are delivering the purpose that is required by a group leader, let me use that term. And let me take an example of sales head. Right, there is a target that the sales head, and he has let's say regional leaders or country leaders that are reporting into him, and each of the leaders have their own targets, and they are meeting those targets. And eventually, by their team members meeting the target and group members meeting the target, not team members, eventually the group leader is also meeting their target. they may not need to become a team. And that is what we are saying, because we are proponent of a particular team definition that has been called out as a team. But when I look at from the organization's head perspective, right? So if CEO is talking to a sales head, they will say, okay, how is your team doing? What's the team target? And the language that the organization will continue to use is team, while they may not necessarily be a team.
So it sounds like
there may be a work group which is working together to achieve a particular purpose, and if that's working, that's working. Yeah? There's no need to change, unless there is a new directive that comes from the organization and say, boss, fantastic, you are doing fantastic work, but now because of the market dynamics, there is a new push that is coming in, and here is the new objective for your group to achieve. And that new objective may require these people who are group members to not necessarily work independently, but work interdependently as well. To work for something which is shared goal or a shared purpose, to which all of them need to work together to get there. Then potentially there may be a need for them to change and become a team.
So there seem to be a few things that you spoke about. First part was if there is a structural issue in the team itself, then maybe team coaching is not needed at the moment. Fix something else and then come back to it.
Correct.
The other thing that you also mentioned is the mental models of organizations, where they believe a team is a set of people who are working together, right? And whether they are working independently or not doesn't matter, but they are just because they're like sales team, like the example that you gave, because each one is working on their own goals and all that cumulative adds up to the team's goals, but each one is responsible for what they're So mental models of organization and also talking about the goals is somewhere, I guess, related to the structural issue as well.
Correct.
And the third aspect that you also spoke about is that is there a third aspect which is not coming to my mind immediately, but I thought you just mentioned one.
Third thing that I was talking about is that if there is a new purpose or new objective that the organization would throw at this group, and say now with this new objective, there is probably a need for them to now work together instead of working independently.
And what would be an example of that? When do organizations feel the need that they need to, they can't continue this independent way of working, they need to work interdependently, but when would that happen?
So, see, in the same example, the market dynamics are pushing very hard on the organizations, and while in the current scenario they may be achieving their targets, but with the technology coming in, with the more social networks which are connecting people together is coming in, there may be a new sales strategy that needs to be built in order for the organizations to achieve the goal that they want to in the coming time. Now, in order to develop that sales strategy, they probably need to come together and work together to see what will work everywhere. And hence, a need for them to work together and figure out, how will we work now in the current market dynamic with the new technology challenges coming 2 to 3 years time. And hence the need for the team to work.
So it sounds like an example where this organization which kind of reached out to us, very large, very good growth, and are anticipating completely new growth, and therefore the senior leadership team, like Richard Hackman calls it, senior leadership team who's been doing what they do, managing each and every function very well. Now they need to come together to talk about, okay, how are we going to tackle this growth? What does this growth mean for us, and what do we need to do differently?
Correct, absolutely.
Right. So I think that and there's a very live example for us where the organization is actually saying that the old ways of leadership is not going to work anymore.
Absolutely. So I think coming back to your original question of when do you not require team coaching? I think the obvious answer is if this set of people is not a team, you don't necessarily need team coaching.
And right? They're still doing well as well.
Yeah, they're doing well. So there is no need for the team coaching there. I guess another aspect to look at is if there are structural fixes which are required, right? Role clarity is not there. The group membership is not there. So, for example, if there is a team which is working together to achieve a particular goal, but they lack the functional or technical competence within their team, then possibly that needs to be fixed together before you can introduce team coaching, right? So, if there is a structural, for the lack of better word, completeness, then possibly that needs to be achieved before you can.
Can I just recap that? I mean, just to make sure. So what you seem to be saying is that if the capability or the skills that are required for you to work together, whether functional and the base level is what you seem to be talking about. If the base level it's not there, then don't embark on team coaching. Do something to help them. That's the focus at the moment, to help them come up the learning curve for that.
Yeah, because you're not a team yet. Imagine a cricket team where you only have bowlers or you only have batters, right? How will that work? So first of all, they have to make the capability to make sure that the capability is required to get to the objective is one.
And I think that's a beautiful example, because today it's no longer about being a bowler or a batter. You have to be a bowler and a good fielder. You have to be a batsman and a good fielder. You have to be an all-rounder. You can't just be a wicket keeper. So there are so many things that are coming together. So now the pressures of the outside world are becoming more and more showing up even in cricket teams.
Absolutely. No, I guess another thing that I've seen, when the team is in a crisis situation and they need to come out of the crisis, handle emergencies, that's not the space for team coaching. Team coaching demands to create a space for a team to reflect and grow. When you're in a crisis situation, there is no space to reflect, because they're always in the mode of reaction. I need to do firefighting most of the time. I guess that's not the space for team coaching.
I just want to contrast it with something. You remember you and I worked on the, we read through that and we shared it as a reading material also. The Chilean miners rescue, those efforts. It was a classic example of teaming, how people came together. And so it's interesting that you say when team is in crisis, it sounds like the team is in a state of go all the time. But that is very different from teaming.
That is correct. So, in the Chilean miners case study, right, there was a brilliant showmanship of teaming. But there was no team coach there. The team needed to respond to the urgency. And hence, people came together, did whatever they need to do in order to rescue those miners who were, subdued under the earth, right? You don't have a space for a team coaching. Okay, now you reflect what you need to do, how you're doing. That's not the space to reflect. They don't have that mind space. They have a mind space of, okay, how do I save the lives which are staying down?
And it sounds like something that you said earlier. You spoke about how teams, so you're a work group or a team. So I think in this case, teaming behaviors they were absolutely clear what their purpose was. We need to rescue those guys and as many lives that we can save. I think that was the bottom line and the purpose for them. And everybody had skills which were all part of that. So they had some complementary skills and technical skills, right? And there was
So in that particular case study, if you read that through, wherever the skills were missing, all through the world, people came in to share their skills and became part of it.
Wonderful.
Right? So it's not that the team was formed and they started working. The team was on the go getting formed. Wherever the gaps were needed, they were getting filled in order to achieve the common.
So I think complementary skills does not mean only task. It also means your own ability to team. So I remember, in such a situation, I don't think consensus would have worked as a decision-making style.
I don't think I have enough depth or understanding of that case study to see how they made decisions at that point in time. But I guess, project director there was calling the shots.
Yes.
And there was a huge trust on the project director and the technical team there. I'm sure there were some brainstorming and discussions were happening in the executive room to decide which direction to go. And I don't know if it was a consensus decision or was it a directional decision, or I don't know.
So I think if I remember the case study well, they were all discussed. There were pros and cons. Somewhere they had to take a risk, right? And they decided, okay, this is a risk good enough to take. And then they came to that. And I'm sure there would have been cases where people would have said agree to disagree, or people would have said that let's just go with what we can do, because time is also very, very precious in that particular scenario. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you spoke about so the need for becoming a team is also important. When you said work group, this is absolutely important for you to now start looking at whether team coaching will work for them.
Yeah. And I guess some of the examples that comes to my mind where potentially team coaching will not work is when the leadership style is punishment oriented, closed thought process, not enough psychological safety. In all those cases, possibly it is important to work with a leader before you start working with the team, so that they understand that the safety is required, right? So jumping onto the team coaching and the leadership style itself is not supportive, that would probably be a disaster.
Absolutely. I think in one of our experiences where the leader was not willing to take the ownership or the responsibility of what is going to be good as an outcome for this team was a huge kind of a no for us, in terms of saying this is not the modality. Something else can work here, but this is not the modality there, right? And also the fact that, like you said, if there is not enough psychological safety, you don't have to have maximum psychological safety, but if there is enough psychological safety, I think it could still work.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to ask you a question about then when do we need it? So let me phrase my question in three different aspects, right? One is, when do you definitely need team coaching? When does team coaching become nice to have? I think these two. When is it necessary and when does it become nice?
I think it's a very, very important aspect that you said, nice to have and need to have. Most people, and I'm just going to use the coaching as we know. Typically in good times, people think that you don't need coaching. Actually, in good times, you need coaching, right? So similarly, when you are in good times, you also need coaching for your team. What makes it work is the fact that you are in a space where you're open to possibilities. But having said that, the team alone or the individuals alone are not responsible for it. So I think what makes it something that you should do is also depends on how you're going through your own, way of becoming a team. So if you're not a team, first make yourself a team, right? To whatever bare minimum extent that is required. And which is why we have, a Hackman and Wagman definition. We have, Katzenbach and Smith definition. But it basically says that if you're in a space where you're realizing that there is a need for increased collaboration, go ahead and start. And that's a need to have. You could start exploring team coaching. And I think one of the biggest things that, biggest experiences that we could talk about is, this leadership team of a non-profit organization wanted to work on their strategy. And this was a team at varied levels. So this was not direct reporting, but varied levels. But they were the team. There were only so many people. So they had to come together to decide what the strategy of this. And this is a new team that had gotten formed. So I think this was very important because now they wanted to look at how are they going to leapfrog themselves. And therefore, every not knowing what the other person is doing was impacting.
So if I understand what you're saying is that increased collaboration may one be the need of where the team is. Second could also result the uh, from the external demand, right? So, for example, if the cycle of becoming a team is becoming shorter, right? So instead of instead of having a 1 month project, you only need to deliver in 6 months. And you're forming a team, then possibly you don't have enough time to spend and let the people become team organically. And that's where potentially team coaching would accelerate the process of becoming, and hence the increased collaboration, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes it also happens when you're looking at growth. When like the organization that we were talking about, so the organization has grown, done so beautifully. Now there is completely different aspects of growth that are there, and this growth is basically now telling them they can't continue working the way they were earlier. They need to do something different, and they've also grown large. So if they don't set the tone now, it is not going to sustain them in the long run. Right? So therefore, increased collaboration can happen. I think one of the best examples is if you're a matrix organization. When your team membership itself is for many, so you realize that all these teams that are working together they're moving closer towards interdependence. So need for increased collaboration could come from growth. It could come from just the way you're structured, or you've grown across geographies, and you're also noticing that you can't work in isolation anymore. You need to be more interdependent than what you are. So all these are drivers, I guess, to say this is need to have.
So in our earlier example, when you were talking about the sales head, where the organization is saying, okay, now the new market dynamics are coming in, you need to work together to create that, and that's where the formation of increased interdependency and hence the formation of team and team coaching might be required.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm realizing we are possibly 4 minutes over. How would you like to summarize this for us?
So one is, I think the way I'll summarize is that when you see a nail, don't use your hammer of team coaching all the time. Use your discernment, and that is why I think for a coach, and why do you call it coach and not any other modality, is also because the ability for a coach to sense is very high. And therefore, are you sensing all these aspects? Are you sensing, first of all, if when not to do team coaching, so or at least enter into this modality is when there is lack of psychological safety, the leader is not taking ownership. We also spoke about when they are work groups and they're doing very well, there is no need for them to change. We also spoke about when they are in crisis mode, right? So then something else needs attention. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think more or less covered. Yeah, I guess when they need to become a team and when they need the team coaching is possibly when you need to increase your collaboration. Either because of the internal organization or because of the external pressure, if there is a need to increase collaboration, if the organization purpose or the purpose of the team is demanding more interdependency, I guess that's when the team coaching would be used and would be useful. And when it is good time for a team, it's probably good time to reflect as well. And that's when, so don't make an assumption that the good time doesn't mean that you don't need help.
And I just wanted to add one aspect which we didn't speak about. I don't know whether it's right to bring it up towards the end, but when you notice dysfunctional behavior in teams, it's a symptom which needs further exploration to figure out, are the conditions conducive for team coaching, or do you need to do something? So I just wanted to summarize with that.